Hello. Today we're going to talk about Unit 7 from Grammar and Vocabulary, Adjectives and Adverbs. And one of the first words we're going to encounter is loath, right? And its unusual pattern, which is he was loath to admit. They were obviously loath to let her leave, which means not willing to do something, right? A formal term you can see here in the in parentheses, right? Right? The next term is immune. And immune is an interesting term because it has two different patterns with two different meanings. You're immune to something, which means you cannot catch something. You're immune to German measles. Uh, and because of that, you can be immune to something that can affect you, like immune to criticism, to somebody's charms, to the economic conditions. In that case, you mean that this will not harm you. But you can also be immune from something which is protected and therefore able to avoid it. And it means exempt, right? So no one should be immune from prosecution. Not even the president's wife was immune from criticism by the press, right? So these two terms are very good. Then after the entry test, we come across in the section that is called the basics at the very bottom, a rather short list of many adjectives that end in ly, right? This ending that you have here, we tend to take it as an adverb, but this is an adjective. Cowardly, right? Not brave, so you speak of a cowardly man, right? And then many others like melancholy, actually, right? Melancholy can be a noun, but it can also be an adjective. So we go there and you speak of melancholy thoughts or melancholy memories or melancholy song, right? Meaning very sad. You do have two words, melancholic, right? But it is old-fashioned or literary, right? So it's not a frequent choice. And here is a list of other words that do not appear here as adjectives that end in ly that may confuse you, right? They're a bit deceptive in that sense. Slovenly, slovenly habits, right? Untidy, careless. Then slatternly, a slatternly woman. This is a sexist term, right? Dirty and untidy. Shapely, shapely figure, shapely young woman, shapely fingers. And gaily, more or less the opposite, right? But having to do with the way in which you move. And gaily boy, and gaily in a diving suit, right? Not very attractive. Worldly, someone with worldly success or worldly goods, meaning the things that you own, right? Worldly. And now we're going to get started with section 1, yes, which is adjectives after nouns. Here in this book, you get a series of adjectives that may be used attributively or predicatively, right, before or after the noun. Now, what happens here is that there is a change in meaning, right? The present circumstances would be the current circumstances as opposed to the people present, which is the people who are here. Let me know if you have questions regarding the others. I wanted to show you that there are many other combinations in which the adjective is fixed after the noun, as in court martial, a poet laureate, president-elect, which I think is here in your notes, Secretary General, heir apparent, which you know very well from history. You have also heir presumptive, by the way. Notary public, right? Actually, here you get only notary, but you also say notary public. Vacant, and in this case, I meant the situations vacant, right? The section in the newspaper that advertises jobs, right? So, well, pay attention to these. All of these are taken from Swan, right? And Swan also says, well, we also, entry 13 from Swan. There are also measurements, right? You speak of 3 meters high, 6 feet deep, 10 years older, but you also say worth 10 pounds, right? Is there anything interesting? I need to go somewhere quiet, right? So there are many other cases in which we use adjectives after the noun. Not too many, but some. A good number for us to pay attention to them. Then we're going to go to patterns, right? And we're going to pay attention to these patterns like loath and immune that we saw at the beginning. Now we're going to concentrate on loath, right? Oh, I had liable. First, sorry, we saw loath and immune first. Now we're going to look at liable, right? Um, Something is liable for something, which is a different meaning once again, changes, the preposition changes and the meaning changes, which means legally responsible, right? Liable for damages or for somebody's debts. But liable to something means likely, so it's liable to make mistakes, liable to collapse. And as it says here, this is very much like prone, right? Prone to do something, right? Prone to doing something and prone to something. This one accept several patterns, right? And also error prone and injury prone. By the way, here you have the list, listed is due to. Remember that we saw due to in lexical the other day, and we said that due to should not be used depending on some traditionalists as because of, and should always be used after the verb to be, despite the fact that there is plenty of evidence that it is used like because of quite a lot, right? But notice that the example you have here is we're due to arrive. The next one I want to take, and I didn't put it here, is it is in your books, right? Is prepared. Be very careful with prepared because it's a very false friend. Prepared does not mean ready. Prepared means willing. So I am prepared to compromise means estoy dispuesto, no estoy listo. These are two very different things, right? Another pattern I wanted to focus on appears at the very bottom of the page is devoid of. The one you see here, something is devoid of something, meaning without it. So she was devoid of warmth, or place devoid of vegetation, right? And I think maybe that's the last one. I know integral to, right? We have integral to, which is part of something, right? Music is an integral part of something, but integral to practical experience is integral to the course, meaning essential, right? This is just another pattern. Okay, we're done from the dictionary for a couple of minutes. The next part of the section is devoted to adverbs and adjectives and whether they are the same or not. There isn't much I can add to what is here. But basically you need to be careful because sometimes a word may have an ly ending as an adverb, but function as an adverb without ly. For this, you have a much more complete entry from Swan, which is number 27, right? I strongly recommend it. You have practically all cases there, right? It is very, very useful. And it is important that you stop to consider the ones, frankly, that you do not know, but we cannot go over them here. All of the activities in section 1 are really, really good. Please go on and do them, right? In the paraphrasing, you have prepared. Remember, prepared doesn't mean ready, right? It means willing. Now we're going to move on to section 2, and once again the dictionary is going to be silent for a while. Section 2 is about inversion, right? And you know inversion is something that we have already seen in language 2, but we're going to go back to it. Inversion is when there is a deferring of the subject, says Fowler, right? He says also that natives use inversion as routine, and that it passes virtually unnoticed. It is merely a way of making a statement more emphatic, sorry. And why does it happen? Well, simply as it says here, when we begin a sentence with a negative adverb or an adverbial phrase. But when these negative adverb or adverbial phrase refer to the main verb of the sentence. We'll look at some cases in which this is not so, simply because the negative adverb does not apply to the main verb of the sentence, right? Now, the cases of inversion are very well known to you, but I would like to single out a couple of things from here. Let's see, I didn't check. No sooner, right? No sooner had I done something than something else happened. No. Well, you have the grammar point actually. Oh, that's beautiful. We have a beautiful entry here in Oxford, right? And you have all the cases. And actually, the question is what happens when you use them at the beginning in this case, right? When this calls for inversion, right? No sooner had we done something, right? Hardly, scarcely, had we, I insist, that sat down when something happened. Now here, Oxford explains to us that with hardly, scarcely, and also barely, as you have here, we use when, right? Not then, and no sooner we use than. Please remember that speakers actually confuse, native speakers get confused as well, but maybe a good mnemotechnic rule is that sooner the comparative takes than. Another interesting point is that the past perfect is really relevant here, right? Because we're talking about two sentences that show two, not two sentences, but actually, but two actions, right? That show immediacy, only one M, right? We pronounce only one, immediacy. And so we need that the past perfect to show that one event was before the other one, but these were very, very close. All right, then we also use not until phrases, many phrases that you already know, like not until, not since, not for 1 minute. And what I want you to see in these cases, with not until, not since, only after, only when, and only in, I would say, is that we need to be very careful because these phrases actually head a clause, not until he apologizes. The verb apologize is part of the clause that is headed by until or not until. So inversion occurs later, we could say, will I speak to him? I'm following the notes from your book, right? The same happens with not since I was little. Inversion is not for the verb to be, but rather have I had so much fun. Inversion is takes place in the verb of the sentence that is modified by the negative phrase, which is not since, right? So be careful with these cases, right? Sometimes it is more obvious when this is a preposition, like not for 1 minute or only after several weeks, quite simply because being prepositional phrases, they do not have a verb of their own, right? But please be very careful with all of the uses of inversion, right? There are examples here for never, rarely, seldom, hardly ever, all of them prompting inversion in the sentence, like little, right? Or nowhere at the beginning of the sentence. All of these are examples you know. I would like to bring up the case of as actually in mid-sentence when we say we were sorry as were my parents. I stepped inside as did my friends. These examples are taken from Fowler. We'll go back to Fowler in a minute. But remember that as is a conjunction. It is not a preposition, so it needs a verb. More examples with only by patience, only in this way, in no way, on no account, under no circumstances, and here there are a couple missing, at no time, in no way. So, or sorry, no way was there, on no condition, will I do something, right? All of them prompting inversion. But when is there no inversion? Well, there's no inversion when the negative adverb that appears at the beginning of the sentence modifies the noun that follows it. Like in no doubt, there will be no trouble. No student is to leave the classroom. No 2 days were the same. Not a day went by when I didn't remind her of her debt. And the examples you have here, rarely seen during the day or hardly anyone knows about it, rarely and hardly modify seen and anyone, and that is why there's no inversion. There's one more case in which there is no inversion, and that is when we use never at the beginning two more cases, when we use never at the beginning But we mean don't, as in never fear, never do what she says, never let me go, like Kazuo Ishigura's novel, right? Um, and the other case I was mentioning was with only, but when only modifies the noun that is following it. Could be uh, a proper noun like only Mary knows the truth, or a common noun like only machines can do this, right? So be very careful because this use of inversion is not meant to be used without paying attention, right? And well, and remember that this is mainly for emphatic purposes, right? Uh, Very good. Okay, as regards the activities here, they're all very, very useful, so I strongly recommend you do them all, frankly, right? And we're going to move on to the last section, which is section 3, in which you get comparatives, right? The first comment I want to make about comparatives is when you use the same, what follows is as. Now, as in this case is used in its prepositional function, right? So Ben has much the same mannerisms as his father. In this case, as his father, as is a preposition, right? Notice that the second one, different, you get the preposition we used different from in British English, but Americans will say different than, right? Or different to, also British English, right? So notice the explanations here in brackets. Now, the other expressions that are really, really good here are anywhere near, right? This one, remotely close to in extent, level, or scope. So you see there are many examples here. Imitations rarely look anywhere near as good as. This is the pattern. Anywhere near the levels. Well, this is not finished. Sorry, let us do this. Here's another example. Anywhere near as gorgeous tomorrow as it was today, right? Okay, so I wanted the examples with a complete comparative, right? Or in this, but none excited me anywhere near as much as this one, right? So let's go back to the meaning. This is remotely close in extent, level, or scope. And we also have nowhere near, right? And more examples here. He's nowhere, not nearly. That's the idea. Nowhere near as popular as he used to be. And we have fewer examples here. Nowhere near as solid as Grossman maintains, or nowhere near as bad as what I had thought it would be. Okay, I do recommend you looking this up and having a look at these examples if you're not familiar with the structure. You can also go nothing like as cold as is your example here, but Lexico doesn't provide examples for this one, so I'm not choosing it, right? Now, as regards as and like, which is the next point I would, oh no, wait, there's something else I want to discuss. First, you get the double comparatives, which are, to me, quite straightforward. There's nothing unusual there. But then when we express preference, I would like to get your attention, right? The verb prefer before as, right? I prefer something. I prefer something to something else, right? Venice to Rome. But what happens when you use I would prefer? Val would presumably prefer that you didn't get arrested, right? When I use would, this creates a knock-on effect on the pattern, and that is what happens, right? So be very careful with prefer. So I would prefer. You could say, I would prefer to do something. I would prefer not to do something. And there's another pattern, which is, I would prefer it if you did something else, right? Maybe this one has that pattern. Sorry. That's a very unusual pattern, right? And the same happens with the verb appreciate. right? I would prefer it if you didn't tell anyone. I would appreciate it if you didn't tell anyone, right? The subjective it, which can cause a lot of trouble, right? The patterns would prefer are rather problematic, right? Okay, you have many boxes to express that. Okay, um, now yes, let's go to the differences between as and like. Let's see if we have, in the meantime, a nice little box that explains the difference between. Oh, I already had as there. Um, yes, which word as and like. Yes, you can explore this entry. Basically, what we keep telling you is that as is a conjunction, like is a preposition, right? He has blue eyes like me. Or as I do, right? She enjoys music as I do, right? We can use informally like in place of as, but we don't actually. People do. In class, we don't, right? And we also have as if. Now, this brings about a lot of problems, right? Because as can also be used as a preposition, and in that case, um, there's going to be a couple of changes in meaning, right? So we have to be very, very careful. And in this case, we can follow Swan. Swan provides an entry for as and like. It is entry 326, right? Um, Apart from dealing with the matters that we have been already mentioning, that is to say, that we say as I do, and you can also say like I do, Swan provides an entry for the comparison between using as and like, but after negatives, and that's a very important entry, right? So I repeat, this is entry 326, and sub-entry number 6, and he says, I'm going to use a search box here to give you the example so that you can follow. And it says, I don't smoke, comma, like Jane, right? So Jane smokes, I don't. But, and so what happens when I say, like Mary, I don't smoke. Neither of us smokes, right? Or so be very careful, right? The meaning changes, right? So we have to pay attention, right? And another thing that I want you to see from Fowler is that when you use as a preposition, the meaning is different. The examples Fowler gives you are as your brother, I must warn you to be careful, right? As your brother. As your brother, I must tell you, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter, right? But if I were to say like, so in this case, I am your brother, right? But if I were to say like your brother, the meaning has changed, as you can see, right? I'm not your brother, right? But I have the same beliefs, right? So that's a huge difference in meaning, don't you think? I think that's something we need to bear in mind, right? Okay, as from section 3, I don't have any other comments to make apart from the fact that there are very nice idioms in the activities section, like run like the wind, like a fish out of water, and to behave as if you were carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, right? So I hope you found this clear, and let me know if you have any questions, of course, right? We'll be commenting on the activities in class. Thank you all. Bye.